How I overcame anxiety with Stoic wisdom. For years, anxiety was this constant, unwelcome shadow in my life. It was like a storm inside my head that I felt completely powerless to control, this nagging whisper of worst-case scenarios that just stole my peace and left me exhausted. It told me what I could and couldn't do, shrank my world, and kept me on edge all the time. Have you ever felt that? That feeling like you're constantly bracing for an impact that never actually comes? What if I told you that the key to calming that storm wasn't some new age trend, but a 2,000-year-old philosophy? A philosophy that was practiced by everyone, from emperors to slaves in ancient Greece and Rome. Honestly, I was skeptical too, but I was also desperate. So I decided to give it a real shot. For 7 straight days, I dove into the wisdom of the Stoics. Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and Epictetus became my guides, and what happened was nothing short of life-changing. In this video, I'm going to walk you through that journey, day by day, and show you exactly how these ancient ideas can become your most powerful weapon in the fight against anxiety. The problem: my life before Stoicism. Before we get into the experiment, you need to understand just how deep I was in it. My anxiety wasn't a now-and-then thing. It was the filter through which I saw everything. At work, it showed up as this crippling fear of failure. Every project, every meeting, every single email felt like a test, where one wrong move could bring everything crashing down. I'd rehearse conversations in my head for hours, agonize over tiny decisions, and lie awake at night replaying every little mistake. It was draining. I ended up doing less because I was terrified of doing anything that wasn't perfect. Socially, it was just as bad. I'd say no to invitations, not because I didn't want to go, but because the idea of just being around people was overwhelming. That inner voice was just relentless. What if I say something dumb? What if they think I'm boring? What if I have nothing to add? I'd be there physically, but in my head, I was a million miles away, lost in my own anxious maze. This constant state of high alert took a physical toll. My shoulders were always clenched up by my ears, my heart would pound at the slightest surprise, and I felt this deep fatigue that sleep couldn't touch. I felt so fragile, like I was living at the mercy of my own runaway mind. I was constantly spinning out about things I had zero control over. What people thought of me, what might go wrong tomorrow, if I was even on the right path. As the Stoic philosopher Seneca pointed out, we often suffer more in our imagination than we ever do in reality. I was living proof of that. My suffering came from imagined futures that hadn't happened and probably never would. I knew something had to give. That's when, down a late-night internet rabbit hole, I found Stoicism. It wasn't about bottling up your emotions. It was about understanding them. It was a playbook for taking action on the things you can actually control. I was ready to run the first play. Day 1. The dichotomy of control. My first day started with what is truly a foundational principle in Stoicism, something so simple but so powerful it can change your entire perspective. The dichotomy of control. Epictetus, a man who was born a slave and became a legendary Stoic teacher, summed it up perfectly. Some things are up to us, and some things are not. That's it. That's the starting line. The Stoics argue that most of our anxiety, frustration, and anger comes from confusing these two categories. We burn all our energy trying to control things that are completely out of our hands. The traffic, the weather, other people's opinions, and even our own health to a degree. At the same time, we neglect the one area where we have profound influence: our own mind, our judgments, our choices, our responses. My challenge for day one was to consciously run every anxious thought through this filter. I grabbed a small notebook and made 2 columns, in my control and not in my control. The first test didn't take long. I got a vague, 1-line email from my boss. We need to talk about the quarterly report. Instantly, the old anxiety script started playing. What did I mess up? Is she mad at me? Am I getting fired? My heart started hammering, but then I made myself stop. I pulled out my notebook. Under not in my control, I wrote, my boss's mood, her opinion of the report, the outcome of the conversation. Under in my control, I wrote, how I prepare for the meeting, the mindset I choose to have, my ability to listen calmly and respond without getting defensive, my choice not to spiral into worst-case scenarios. It was like a switch flipped. The paralyzing fear was replaced by a sense of purpose. I couldn't control what she would say, but I could absolutely control my preparation. So I spent the next hour reviewing the report, gathering my notes, and getting ready to discuss it with confidence. And the meeting? It turned out she just had a few questions about data points for her own presentation. All that worry, all that suffering in my imagination was for nothing. By focusing only on what I could control, I turned a moment of panic into productive action. Day 2. It's all in the perception. Building on that first lesson, day 2 was about another Stoic superpower, realizing it's not events that upset us, but our judgments about them. The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius wrote in his private journal something that really hit me. Today, I escaped anxiety. Or no, I discarded it because it was within me, in my own perceptions, not outside. This idea is radical. It means the source of our turmoil isn't out there, it's in here. Think about it. 2 people can be stuck in the same traffic jam. One is pounding the steering wheel, fuming, letting it ruin his whole day. The other puts on a podcast, leans back, and just uses the unexpected pause. The event is identical. The only thing that's different is their perception. One judges the situation as a disaster. The other sees it as just a fact of life. My task for day 2 was to become a detective of my own thoughts. Any time I felt that spike of anxiety, I had to hit pause and ask, what is the raw fact, and what is the dramatic story I'm adding on top of it? My practice round came at the grocery store. It was packed. The aisles were jammed, the checkout lines were a mile long, and to top it off, someone had grabbed the very last carton of the oat milk I like. My automatic reaction was a flash of irritation. This is so annoying. Why is it always a zoo in here? Now this whole trip is pointless. Then I remembered my task. The external event, the store is busy, and an item is sold out. The story I was telling myself. This is a huge problem that is personally ruining my day. I decided to challenge that story. What if I changed the judgment? What if the story was, a lot of people are getting their shopping done. This brand is popular, so it makes sense it's sold out. I'll just grab a different one, or get it next time. It felt almost silly, but the change inside me was immediate. The tension in my shoulders just melted away. The irritation vanished. The store was still crowded, the oat milk was still gone, but my emotional response was completely different. I had taken my power back. I wasn't a victim of the situation. I was just an observer making a new choice. As Marcus Aurelius said, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realizing this is where you find your strength. Day 3. Preparing for the worst to find peace. Day 3 introduced what sounds like the most counterintuitive exercise for an anxious person, an exercise known today as premeditatio malorum, or the premeditation of adversity. Basically, you spend time actively imagining worst-case scenarios. What if you lose your job? What if you get sick? What if that big project you're working on fails completely? My anxious brain was already an expert at this, but with a critical difference. My anxiety spins in a loop of pointless fear. The Stoics did it with a specific goal: to rob these scenarios of their power and to prepare themselves emotionally. As Seneca wrote, "A person who has practiced for a crisis before it arrives won't be rattled when it actually comes." By thinking about the worst, you do two things. First, you realize you would most likely survive. You have the skills and resources to handle it. Second, it makes you incredibly grateful for everything you have right now. My challenge was to sit for 15 minutes and deliberately imagine my biggest fear coming true: getting laid off. At first, it was awful. That familiar wave of panic started to rise, but I stuck with the script. I asked myself, okay, so what would really happen the next day? I'd have to tell my family. That would be tough, but they'd be there for me. I'd have to update my resume. I have good experience. I'd have to tighten my budget. It would be uncomfortable, for sure, but as Seneca advised, I could learn to live more simply. It wouldn't be the end of the world. I'd have to start looking for a new job. Stressful, yes, but it's a process I know how to navigate. As I walked through the practical steps, the abstract terror started to fade. It was replaced by a quiet confidence. The worst-case scenario wasn't some fiery apocalypse. It was a difficult chapter that I had the strength to get through. When I finished, I opened my eyes and looked around my apartment. I felt this incredible wave of gratitude for my job, for my stability, for my life exactly as it is right now. I had faced that looming fear, and by looking it right in the eye, I had disarmed it. Day 4. The power of the pen. On day 4, I adopted a practice that was central to many of the great Stoics, including Marcus Aurelius himself. His famous book, Meditations, was really just his private journal. The goal is to use writing not just to record events, but as a tool for thinking clearly. Anxiety loves a chaotic mind. Thoughts just swirl around, getting bigger and scarier because they're never challenged. Writing them down drags them out into the light of day, where you can actually inspect them. It turns a terrifying inner monster into a few simple words on a page. And once they're on the page, you can argue with them, you can question them, you can take their power away. My challenge for day 4 was to do a worry dump before bed. I took my notebook and wrote down every single thing that was making me anxious, no matter how small or silly it seemed. The list got pretty long. An upcoming deadline, a weird look a coworker gave me, a bill I needed to pay, the fact I hadn't called my parents back. Then, one by one, I applied a little Stoic logic. The deadline, I broke it down into small, manageable steps for tomorrow. That's in my control. The weird look from a colleague, I have no idea what they were thinking. Not in my control. I chose to let that thought go. The bill? I scheduled the payment on my phone right then and there. Action, not worry. Not calling my parents? I sent a quick text promising to call the next day. Another simple action. The scary news headline. It was about something happening on the other side of the world, totally outside my control. Worrying about it served no purpose. The whole process felt like decluttering my mind. Each worry I addressed lost its emotional sting. It's like what Marcus Aurelius wrote about stripping things of the dramatic story we build around them. That's what journaling did. It stripped away the emotional drama and left only the bare facts. And the facts are almost never as scary as the fiction we tell ourselves. I slept better that night than I had in weeks. Day 5. Embracing voluntary discomfort. Day 5's challenge was probably the most physical one: voluntary discomfort. The Stoics believed that to build a tough mind, you have to intentionally expose it to a little hardship. Seneca, for example, would purposely eat plain food or wear simple clothes for a few days to prove to himself that his happiness didn't come from luxury. The logic is simple. If you live in a bubble of constant comfort, the slightest inconvenience feels like a huge crisis. But if you deliberately and safely expose yourself to things like cold, hunger, or physical effort, you expand your definition of what you can handle. You prove to yourself that you're way more durable than you think. My anxiety was often a fear of discomfort, the discomfort of a hard conversation, of failure, of being judged. So my challenge for day 5 was simple, but not easy. Take a cold shower. I'll be honest, I was dreading it. I love my warm showers. Standing there, my brain was feeding me a dozen excuses. This is pointless. It's going to be horrible. Just skip it. But I remembered the reason. To choose discomfort, to prove it couldn't break me. I turned the handle to full cold and stepped in. The shock was intense. Every part of me wanted to leap back out. My breath got short, my muscles clenched. But then I focused. I told myself, this is just a physical sensation. It isn't harming you. You control your reaction. I forced myself to breathe slowly and deeply. I stayed in for 1 full minute. When I got out, something incredible happened. The misery was gone, replaced by this amazing feeling of accomplishment and energy. I had faced something hard head-on, and won. Suddenly, the rest of my morning felt easier. The little tasks that normally gave me stress seemed totally insignificant in comparison. I had started my day by willingly doing something hard, and it recalibrated my entire perspective. The cold shower was a physical symbol for a psychological truth. The discomfort we dread is almost always worse in our heads than in reality. By leaning into it, we steal its power and find a strength we never knew we had. Day 6. The anchor of the present moment. So much of anxiety is a problem of time travel. We're either stuck regretting the past or terrified of the future. We are anywhere but right here, right now. Day 6 was about reclaiming the only time that's real, and the only time we have any power, the present. In his meditations, Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself, each of us lives only in the present, this brief instant. The rest has been lived already, or is impossible to see. The Stoic version of what we might call mindfulness today, they called it prosoche, or attention, isn't about emptying your mind. It's about focusing it completely on what's right in front of you. When you're washing the dishes, you are just washing the dishes. You're feeling the warm water and hearing the plates clink, not replaying an argument or worrying about tomorrow's meeting. My task for day 6 was to practice this radical presence. I decided to go for a 20-minute walk with no phone, no podcast, no distractions at all. My only job was to pay attention. The first 5 minutes were tough. My mind immediately tried to fill the silence with its usual noise: to-do lists, worries, random ideas. It felt like trying to hold a beach ball underwater. But every time my mind wandered, I gently brought it back. I focused on the feeling of my feet on the sidewalk, the cool air on my skin, the sound of birds, the way sunlight looked coming through the leaves. Slowly, things started to shift. The buzzing energy in my chest began to calm down. The constant hum of anxiety got quiet. I wasn't trying to solve my problems. I was simply being. I noticed little details on houses I'd walked past 100 times. I saw the bright color of a flower growing through a crack in the concrete. The world, which usually felt like a blurry backdrop to my inner drama, came into sharp, vivid focus. In those 20 minutes, I found a little pocket of real peace. It was a powerful lesson. Peace isn't something you find by finally solving all your problems. It's something you access by grounding yourself, right here, right now. Day 7. The transformation and the path forward. On the 7th and final day, a moment happened that showed me just how much had changed. It wasn't some big, dramatic event. It was a small, quiet moment of truth. I got an email with some pretty direct, critical feedback on a project I had poured my soul into. A week ago, this would have sent me into a full-on spiral. My stomach would have dropped, my mind would have exploded with defensive, self-hating thoughts, and the anxiety would have ruined my entire day. I would have seen it as proof that I wasn't good enough. But on this day, my reaction was different. I read the email, and I felt that initial sting of disappointment. Stoicism doesn't turn you into a robot. You still feel things, but it's about not being controlled by that first impression. I acknowledged the feeling, and then I paused. I thought about the dichotomy of control, the feedback itself, not in my control. My reaction, and what I did next, totally in my control. I thought about my perception. This wasn't a personal attack. This was just information, an opportunity to make the project better. I thought about preparing for the worst. I had already imagined total failure. This was nowhere near that. This was constructive. Instead of spiraling, I took a deep breath and wrote a simple, professional reply. I thanked them for the detailed feedback, agreed with the valid points, and laid out the steps I'd take to fix them. I felt no rage, no panic, just a calm sense of purpose. I had successfully discarded the anxiety because it was inside me, a choice I was no longer making. That was the moment I knew this wasn't just a week-long experiment. It was the start of a whole new way of living. This 7-day journey was my story. But these principles are for everyone. They are a 2-0-year-old toolkit for building a stronger, calmer, more purposeful mind, and it's available to all of us. This philosophy has been a lifeline for me, and I honestly believe it can be for you too. If any of this resonated with you, if you're tired of letting anxiety call the shots, and you're looking for a real, practical way to get back in the driver's seat, then subscribe to this channel. My goal is to keep exploring this ancient wisdom and share simple, actionable strategies that can help all of us handle the chaos of modern life with a little more calm and a lot more strength. Conclusion. So what did I really learn after 7 days of living like a Stoic? I learned that freedom isn't about having no problems. It's the wisdom to know which problems are yours to solve. I learned that resilience isn't something you're born with. It's a muscle you build, one intentional discomfort at a time. And I learned that peace of mind isn't some far-off destination you finally arrive at. It's a practice you choose, moment by moment. This journey didn't magically erase every worry from my life. The Stoics were realists. They knew challenges are just part of being human. What it gave me was a framework, a compass. Now, when the storm of anxiety starts to gather, I know I'm not powerless. I have my tools. I can separate what I can control from what I can't. I can question my perceptions. I can choose to respond with courage and reason instead of fear. The core message of Stoicism is one of incredible empowerment. We don't control what happens to us, but we always have power over how we respond. That is where our freedom is. That is where our strength is found. I want to leave you with a popular translation of a thought from Marcus Aurelius. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. My hope for you is that you begin to realize that strength today. Thank you for watching. I'd love to hear your own experiences with anxiety in the comments below. What's one thing you can do today to focus on what's in your control?